Welcome back to Reviews with Elaine, because I have opinions. And today's opinions will be about Fugitive Telemetry by Martha Wells. This is the first of the Murderbot books that I'm going to be reviewing all by its lonesome. And that's not because I have wildly more thoughts about it, but just because I have it as a separate copy instead of as part of an omnibus. Now, I do also own it as part of the omnibus because I made a mistake, but knowing that the next one was a standalone, I decided to read my standalone copy. Also, these are absolutely gorgeous copies. The texture of them, the cover has this beautiful, like, papery texture that just feels so nice in the hand. But that has nothing to do with the book itself. The book itself, well, I read it twice in the last 2 days. And don't judge me on this, like, these are swiftly becoming my new comfort books, and in June of 2025, I need comfort books. But because this is the 5th of the Murderbot Diaries, yeah, there will be spoilers for the previous 4 novellas. As usual, I recommend reading those books first, watching my review of those books, and then coming and watching this review if you care at all about spoilers. If you don't care about spoiling what happens in book 1 through 4, keep watching, friend. You do you. I don't care. But this one picks up with Murderbot on Preservation Station. Finally, safely back with its humans. Or sort of safely? The station security is not exactly happy with having a rogue sec unit on station, but also Murderbot knows there's a good chance that Grey Chris will be trying to take out Dr. Mensah, and now there's a dead body in the station mall. Though Murderbot would much prefer to either be watching its media privately somewhere by itself, or doing the investigation on its own, Mensah suggests that it works with security to find out who killed this random person. Which would be a lot easier if there weren't so many rules to living as a sec unit in human society. With its usual methods of problem solving cut off, Murderbot will have to do a lot of talking to people. Oh god. Bots! Oh no! And transports! And it will eventually have to solve this mystery the old-fashioned way. And I love this book. Like, I really loved it. I think this has been the funniest of them so far, and I love the fact that we get what is basically a classic mystery novel, but as a Murderbot book. And Murderbot itself is aware of the fact that it's sort of wandered into a murder mystery. One of my favorite moments is when it's thinking about the fact that, Indra has just asked it, like, hey, do you have experience with this? And its response is to say yes, because even though its memory has been wiped of the times it has investigated a murder, it can still do this because, you know, it's watched so much mystery shows that are probably only 60 to 70% bullshit, and I love it. That is so chef's kiss perfect. But also, I think the reason that it's able to be more comedic is this is just a much lower stakes book than the previous books, even while being higher emotional stakes. Because Murderbot is now in a place where it doesn't have to conceal what it is to survive. It has some rights, it has friends, and there's only a vague possibility someone will be trying to kill its friends or it. The dead human that we start with is someone that Murderbot does not know. And for much of the book, the characters that are in peril are humans that Murderbot, and so we, as readers, have no connection to. So we end up with what honestly feels very much like a cozy mystery novel. And that's just fun in a series about human bot constructs designed to kill things trying to survive in a universe where most don't see it as anything more than a deadly weapon. And like the contrast there is just chef's kiss perfect. And also, the lower stakes for the external conflict allow this novella to focus in more on the emotional stakes, the internal stakes. We just get a lot more in this one of Murderbot dealing with emotional trauma and its fallout of its previous existence. Hell, there's a page that I was so tempted to just take out a Sharpie and write on it, Murderbot gets therapy without realizing it's getting therapy. But also, there are these beautiful moments when it's dealing with what it means to be perceived as its self, and not as the masks it's worn for the first few books. Like the scene where Indra and Mensah are arguing over whether it has to identify itself with a feed ID. There is absolutely beautiful, subtle things happening with Murderbot's discomfort, and the despair that oozes off of it when it's stabbed in the back not literally, sort of literally, is fucking stunning. And it's a wonderful continuation of the character arc we've been seeing in the entire series. It both wanting and not wanting to be perceived as a human. Both seeing itself as a human and not seeing itself as a human. And trying to figure out where it fits in this, continuum of sentience. And one of the most interesting elements of that is how it disregards balance so completely for so long. Like, we've seen it bond, if somewhat unwillingly, with bots in the past. If anything, Murderbot usually seems a lot more comfortable with bots than with humans. And at least to me, it feels like it's because bots don't expect anything of Murderbot. But in this one, we see Murderbot beginning to be a bit more standoffish with bots. It doesn't reach out to them unless it needs to complete its task. It seems less likely to remember that bots might have their own agenda. And I think it's because bots in preservation are officially granted personhood, but only to a certain extent. They have to have a guardian, and Murderbot consistently insists on thinking of that as their owner. And it makes Murderbot uncomfortably aware of its own personhood and lack thereof. And because Murderbot is not allowed to hack the system here on Preservation Station, it's having to interact with bots in a way that is more like how people interact with them, and so it's aggressively sort of situating itself more as a bot. And so it's only when the bots themselves show their ability to make choices that it's forced to remember the sentience it's always been aware of. And that is just fascinating character interplay. And I think this all plays into what I talked about so much in my last Murderbot review. In this one, we're back to seeing it a lot more pronouns and the use of the Murderbot's actual name. Like, it refers to itself as Murderbot a lot more in this one. And I think that's because the first 4 books, is sort of it gradually learning how much more human it really is than anyone accepts. And in this one, it's getting regular punches in the gut, reminding it that even though it is more human than a bot, it's not human. Which is really such a strong element of the character arc. But I also want this review to cover another ridiculous technical writing tangent. Let's talk about punctuation in this book. So this entire series in general has been doing some really fascinating things to make it feel like reading a verbally told story while on paper. It sounds like both a straightforward report, but also personal, conversational, and the prose just oozes personality. And yes, a lot of that is in the punctuation. Punctuation is used a lot more emotively in these books than it is technically correctly. Like, there are moments that there's a punctuation in the middle of the sentence just because it wants you to pause there. And I have never read a book that throws around parentheses with such abandon. Almost every page has at least one phrase, sentence, or even paragraph in parentheses. Sometimes there are parentheses within parentheses. Sometimes there are entire conversations with each line of dialogue in its own parentheses. And at first I was like, yeah, that's to show us the multiple tracks of Murderbot's processing. It's often doing things and thinking several different things at the exact same time, and the parentheses are a great way of showing that it's doing a system analysis at the same time it's walking through an office, at the same time it's remembering an earlier conversation, at the same time it's watching another conversation on its drones. But I think it's also part of what makes this feel so conversational. I think most people, when telling a story out loud, especially one they have not written out ahead of time, will add little thoughts as they come through. Like, you'll just be saying something and something pops up in your mind and you feel the need to add it. Like what I just did there. That is not in my script. And this feels exactly like that. And it builds that lovely oral report feeling that someone who has no interest in keeping things professional will do. And because so often what's in parentheses are thoughts, memories, and information that add emotional context to the otherwise dry, exact list of things that are happening kind of storytelling, it really builds the humanity behind the report. And it adds so much beautiful layering to this story. I also loved seeing more of our returning characters. The relationship Murderbot has with all of them is just fun and interesting and beautiful. Like, the fact that it does have a quiet antagonism with most of them, but it matches the energy of what each human gives it. So Mimsa shows it respect and protection, and Murderbot shows her the exact same thing. Pen Lee shows it specifically the kind of annoyance that you tend to show your friend who's acting like a child, and so it acts a lot like a petulant teenager when it's interacting with her. Rathy is a puppy dog of friendliness and cuddliness, and Murderbot is a lot kinder and more careful with him. And Gwarthen gives him a casual dislike, but without any malice. And, in fact, a lot of trust, and Murderbot returns that exactly. And it's just really nice seeing it settle into relationships that are all very different, but very settled and comfortable. It shows a new side of the character, the side that is not actually at all bad at interacting with others, once it knows what kind of parameters and expectations exist within this relationship. And one of the things I love about this is that does make Murderbot in this book come across as a bit adolescent. Because I feel like this is a stage that we all, as humans, hit in adolescence, when we are figuring out ourselves and have those relationships that we feel settled in. But then when we are taken out of those relationships, we immediately get insanely defensive because we don't know how to interact outside of those parameters. And that leads me to discussing its new relationships. Indra is the most interesting relationship in this book for me because it is such a fiercely antagonistic relationship. But it is so clear that it's just Murderbot feels rejected, and it so is doing the, well, I don't want you to want me around anyway, kind of thing. And it's cute as hell! And there's a moment in the end where it's so clear that Murderbot expects the worst and literally does not know or understand its own reaction when it doesn't get the worst. And it's so fucking cute, and you can see the exact moment when Murderbot realizes it's picked up more connections, and I loved it! But there's one more thing that I want to talk about here, and that's a little theory that I've developed. So it's established that Dr. Bharadwaj wants to make a documentary to basically reveal the humanity of constructs and make everyone realize that the treatment of constructs is inhumane and horrifying. And Murderbot has agreed to help her, and has talked to her a few times already about its feelings. And I'm just going to drop the theory here just to see if I'm right. I have at least 2 more books to read that are already out, and I have looked and seen that System Collapse is called the next Murderbot diary instead of the last one, so I'm hoping there'll be more. But I think that all of these books are going to turn out to be that documentary. That in the last book, it's going to be revealed that what we, the readers, are reading is exactly what they send out across the universe as Murderbot's story to show everyone how human constructs are. And I don't know, I could be entirely wrong on that. It's just an idea, and I wanted to present it here so that if it turns out I'm right, I can, you know, gloat later. But if not, who cares? But overall, I'm still really, really loving this series. This was such a fun murder mystery story with some utterly amazing emotional arcs and character explorations. It's funny, it's creative, it's masterfully written. I did not guess who done it in the actual mystery, and I will admit a lot of murder mysteries I do. And in fact, there's a spectacular moment when Murderbot and you as the reader just sort of forget that there is a whodunit to solve, and it's great. And there's some cool action, though a good bit less than the previous book. Like, this one just is not quite as action heavy, but I really loved it, and I am not going to bother waiting for the next. Like, I just immediately picked up Network Effect because I needed to, and when you watch the review of that one, you will notice I look exactly the same because, yes, I have read Network Review and written the review, and we'll be recording that tonight as well. But I need comfort reads right now, and these are weirdly comfortable reads. They are fun, they are fast, they are entertaining, emotional, distant enough from reality that I feel like I'm getting escape, but still saying something important to the current moment. And in the end, I just love Murderbot as a character and want the absolute best for it. Also, I sort of want a Murderbot plushie to hug. Is that weird? It might be weird.